we called him. I said, hi. I said, Omar, I don't know if you remember. He's like, oh, yes, of course, Sunny. What's up? I said, well, I have a business plan
proposal.
and I have a business partner. And we met and he looked at the things and he said, look, I'm very interested. I just want to look over the numbers and I'll get back to you. And that's it. And he called us and he was on board and that was it.
Welcome to the Lighthouse Conversations, a podcast featuring entrepreneurs and tastemakers from the worlds of arts, culture, tech, and of course food. I'm your host, Hashem and Sunny. If you're joining us for the first time today, hit the follow button in your podcast player to get alerted when we have a new episode, which is typically every other week. You can also listen to our extensive catalog of previous episodes on our website, thelighthouse.ae/podcast. Our roster includes amazing guests like Fadi Ghandour, Nada Dibs, Chef Daniel Boulud, Ayman Baki, the ladies behind Boksha, and so many others. The UAE has had a colorful art scene from the get-go, from artist collectives like the Flying House, led by Hassan Sharif, galleries like Green Art Gallery and the Majlis, and of course, institutional projects like the Sharjah Biennale next door. One of the key catalysts that helped firmly cement Dubai's place on the contemporary art map was the emergence of The Third Line, a gallery founded by Claudia Tellini, Omar Ghobash, and my guest today, Sunny Rahbar. In 2005, when regional art collectors were still looking west, The Third Line became a platform for artists from our region and a hub for art enthusiasts from my generation. And Sunny and her team have been pushing the envelope ever since. As we unpacked Sunny Rahbar's own story and that of the regional art scene she participated in, and in fact helped define, we zoomed in on the events that led to the founding of The Third Line. So this episode truly is an amazing piece of oral history for anyone interested in documenting the evolution of Dubai's arts and culture scene. When I saw you at the Prada event and we talked about it briefly, and then I was like, do you think you want to come on my podcast? You're like, sure. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Absolutely.
And it stayed in my head. So I was like,
Thank you.
I'm going to just wait a little bit so I don't sound over-eager and give her a month and then call her.
No, that's sweet. That's sweet. No, I've been following your podcast and I'm like, I was really honored to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. You're very kind. I'm going to start a little bit from the beginning. How did you get into the art world or the interest of art to start with? You grew up here in Dubai, is that right?
So I'm from Iran originally.
Right. Your parents are Iranian?
My parents are Iranian. They moved to Dubai in 1980 with me. I was 3 years old and they came here because the revolution had started in Iran and they couldn't go back to Iran. So this is how we ended up in Dubai.
Like so many others.
Like many others. And at the time, Dubai was quite a much smaller place. And it wasn't what we see today. And we basically, my father's an architect, my mother's an interior designer. They basically set up shop here. And I grew up here. I went to school here, went to high school here. I had an interest in art from a very young age. I'd say, maybe more thought that I would be an artist. That was sort of the interest.
You thought you'd be an artist?
Yeah, I wanted to be an artist.
Yeah, right.
That was how it started.
Cool.
And my parents were very encouraging because both of them are
creative industries.
Exactly. So I didn't face any sort of like, oh, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer conversations. Actually, they encouraged me to follow, to pursue the arts. So I was always going to maybe go to art school. And that was sort of the path that was, that I thought I was going to.
Envisage for yourself.
Yeah. Then fast forward to, I was 16. So I was like 16, 17, so my last years of high school. I had a pretty bad experience with an art teacher at the time, whose name I don't even remember, so it doesn't matter.
You blocked it out.
He just made me feel, he knew that I wanted to, because everyone at that point knew that, I did my GCSEs in art and I was doing my A-level in art at that point. And everyone, it was clear, we were looking at universities, like at that time it was like Rhode Island School of Design, which was one of the best. It still is one of the best.
RISD, amazing.
RISD, and a few others like in LA. And anyway, I don't know. He just broke me down.
Isn't it amazing how at this young age, teachers play such disproportionate role in our psyche and self-worth and all of that?
Absolutely. I was 16 years old. I was very impressionable. He was my art teacher and art was my subject.
And was he basically, you're not, in no uncertain terms, but essentially you're not good enough?
Basically. He was like, do you think this is how you're going to get into art school? Like, this isn't good enough. But he kept doing it. I mean, I was pretty resilient. Like, I was like, no. but in a way, he pushed me to work harder, but he just never seemed to be happy. And it's fine because that led me on a completely different path. So I came home one day and I said to my dad, I actually, I'm not going to go to art school. And he was very surprised. And he said, why? This is what you want to do. And I said, well, no, actually, I've changed my mind. I don't want to talk about it, but I like history. So maybe I could do something like international relations. At this point, I just didn't even care. I said, I'm just going to do something else. So then he was like, are you sure you want to talk about it? And I was so upset that I just blocked it. And I just decided, that's it. Like, it's in my past. And why do, and don't pressure me kind of thing. So I managed to actually get myself into a university in London. It was an American university that was in London called Regent's College. I didn't finish my A-levels. I just left kind of in a hurry. And my father was a bit disappointed because he wanted me to go to a good American university. And so I went there and I was, for 2 years doing international relations, AKA having a great time. Also, I was like, I wasn't even, I was in London and I was
by yourself.
17. It was the first time I'd left Dubai, And then one day I'm in a British politics class and I'm sitting there in the classroom. And then suddenly I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? I'm doing something wrong. And I remember I actually left the class and I called my dad and I said, I'm really sorry. I've made a mistake. I shouldn't be here. I should be in studying art, but I understand that I've now been here for 2 years and you've supported me in these 2 years. And I'm not going to start because, to actually go back into art school, you have to start with your foundation. And I knew about Parsons School of Design. So I basically...
Which is an amazing school.
I looked them up. Yeah, amazing school. And they had this one degree. You graduate with a bachelor's in business, and it was called design management or design marketing. And basically it was like for people who wanted to work within the art world,
But on the business side of it.
But also with, sort of art history. So that was basically what I looked up. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to be an artist, then I will work with artists and I will support artists. And basically I sort of like flipped the script on like this teacher who made me go down this path of, or changed my path in life to sort of be that person that worked with artists and supported artists and didn't put them down and make them feel like I had felt.
That's so interesting. Do you regret that decision? In other words, if that, very hard to say, of course, but let's assume that an incident hadn't happened with a teacher. Do you look back today and say sometimes, because you work with so many artists, we're going to get into that. Oh, I wish I was one of them, or no?
No, I mean, honestly,
you're like, oh, they're all so miserable. I definitely don't want to be one of them.
No, no. Actually, I want to come back in my next life as an artist and have a gallery called Sunny, and I'm going to
Sunny Rahbar sponsor and help me. Okay.
Yeah, then I'm going to really like get my. No, I mean, I do feel that if you have from a young age an impulse to express yourself creatively. I think all of us actually have that impulse, and some people just go in that way and continue. Then I think it's always going to be there. I think that I put my energy at this point when I basically, my father said to me, yes, if you can get yourself into, I'm not helping you with anything else, but if you get yourself into Parsons, fine. But you're doing all of it on your own. Like, so I remember I did an interview. I got into my second year there because I lost a year, and then I
feel like that's a reasonable father.
Yeah. I think he was so happy.
I was thinking about my father. I'm like, that's not how he would have reacted.
I know.
So,
exactly.
You have a pretty benign father.
Yeah. I think he was just happy at that. Of course. Finally, because I think he was worried. Like, what is she doing?
Yeah, but also you self-corrected, right? Like you corrected your path on your own, which is amazing. It takes courage.
Yeah.
Most people would have stayed the 4 years, done the degree, been miserable, and then started figuring out what to do.
Yeah, I don't think that I ever regret that I didn't become an artist, because I feel really blessed that I work with artists all the time, and I'm within, this world, and
you're in that world.
And you spend a lot of time when you're working with artists from a young age within their process. So I feel lucky to be on that side as well.
I was doing my research, and of course, like many art lovers here in Dubai and in the region, we all know you and know Third Line. You have an amazing roster of artists, honestly, that you've painstakingly built, frankly, over many years.
Thank you.
And I know that because I've seen also their evolution with you over the years. But the fun part, on top of all of that, so you have those kind of A-listers, right? Let's call them.
Yeah.
Blue chip. You still take risks and bets, because I've met so many young artists through your gallery when they're really still very, very early. And we were talking about Farah, for example, who I met, I was telling you, the very early days when still at Yale or just finishing up.
Yeah.
And then came to your gallery, and then I saw a show at your gallery, and it started becoming more institutional, the look and feel.
Yeah.
And now she's obviously more in the established roster. So you have that ability to work with this variety. You're not known for just young experimental artists or super established, A-listers. Do you think your background and that interest in art and the passion and the knowledge, frankly, helped that, or that just happened?
I think a little bit of both. My personal interest has always been to work with artists of my generation. So at that time, but I didn't know that we're going to be here now. We are now 18 years old, the gallery. I mean, but at that time, you can't even think that far ahead. But at that time, I was 26 when I opened the gallery. So I was
super young.
Yeah. So I was thinking, these are the artists of my generation, and that's who I was meeting. And we have to remember that there was no emphasis or no platform for artists from the Middle East at that time, even if they were in the diaspora. I mean, very few artists were known. I mean, one was Mona Hatoum, the other was Shireen Nashat. I mean, that I remember. And that's actually what happened. To sort of made me think, well, where are the other artists? I mean, there's so many artists in Lebanon, in Tehran,
everywhere, Tehran,
all of
Cairo,
Iran,
Baghdad, Beirut.
Exactly, Beirut. So I was like, why are these artists not represented? And then I realized really quickly, obviously, well, yes, because the art world is, focused on the West.
Yeah.
And then what happened, which I think for me, I mean, it all kind of, the whole thing, including the gallery coming in existence, was 9/11. And that was when everyone was like, wait, who are these Arabs? Who are
the
these
Muslims and the Arabs?
The Arabs and Muslims, or who are these terrorists even? And I think people were trying to understand this part of the world. Really tried to understand, and I was still in New York when that happened. I was actually in New York. I was working at a gallery. I had already graduated, and I was working at this gallery in Soho, actually. So it was not too far. I was living not too far from the gallery either. So, and I remember my mom calling, being like, "That's enough. Come back to Dubai." I was like,
"That's the mom."
Yeah, but like, imagine I'm in New York and she's like, "Coming back to Dubai," and Dubai was at this point where it was booming, and there was the beginning of the real estate boom. They just built the Emirates Towers, and it was a very different Dubai that I had left,
And the other thing that I find quite remarkable is, frankly, you weren't pigeonholed also as an Iranian gallery, which could have happened easily, right? You have a big diaspora here.
Yeah.
You have Iran next door. Both and diasporic Iranians, of course, all over the world,
right,
that we all know are very interested in art, passionate about art, especially Iranian art. So I feel the easier path would have been, all right, I'm going to become the go-to, quote unquote, gallery for Iranian artists.
Could have,
for the region. And you have some amazing Iranian artists, of course, but not only. And I find that also very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with me being Iranian, it was also very, I grew up all my life in Dubai. So I've been here since I was 3 years old.
Yes.
So
you didn't feel that that's what you need
to
represent.
I felt very close to my heritage, or like where I'm from. And my mother, I speak and read and write Farsi because my mother insisted on it. So even though I was here in school, in English speaking school, I was taking classes, on the weekends. But I discovered Iran later through my artists that I worked with. And also, like, I think we have to mention Bidun magazine, because that would be, basically that was the first sort of, let's say, platform or idea for a platform.
And what a platform it was.
Right. And it still exists.
It is. I'm sorry. I'm saying it's just changed the way, the way it delivers.
So 9/11 happens. It's 2001 September. Things really changed rapidly in New York. And I remember I was like, okay, you know what? Like, maybe it's time to go home now.
Yeah, I was there too. I left as well. I moved to London.
So I did that too. I went to London.
Yeah. I feel like all the Arabs and Iranians, everybody moved to London.
Yeah.
London was
like
booming
it was safer or something.
I felt, for the first time after 10 years in the States, so I interrupt you, but I felt not as welcome, frankly, for a period of time, and I moved to London. That was the
Totally.
decision was prompted
So
by
this
9/11.
was right after. Okay, yeah.
I mean, 2 years later, 2003.
Yeah, I remember. You're right. Actually, a lot of my friends. I mean, like I guess in the States could pass as like, you know, I'd always get Mexican. So I was like, you know, but like my friends.
Oh, here
like
comes a Mexican son.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, so maybe, you know, but like in, you know, or Spanish or something. But like I had friends, you know, that actually they who had beard, like the guys had beards and they were shaving their beards because they were so scared that they would get attacked. Right? Like this is really what people maybe forgotten that, but that's what happened. You're right.
No, I
I'm glad you
remember
mentioned
walking
that.
down the street, and I have, as you know, a loud voice, speaking to a friend of mine in Arabic, coming out of a bar, and I picked up a call and went on the street to take the call. And I remember looking around me, and for the first time seeing people looking a little bewildered and uncomfortable, and me being like, I'll call you back. And that was kind of, to me, I don't know why, an aha moment of like, oh. And it stayed for a while. It eventually went away, of course. But that was for me a feeling that like maybe it's time to move on.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was the feeling. And I remember like, because we used to go to Union Square.
I lived in Union Square.
Right. So this was exactly. And I remember right after 9/11, people had gathered there. And there was all this. And I remember the Village Voice actually had, I have to find this copy or like, I'm sure you can find, but like they'd actually written something like, you know, those, you know, bleep, effing, you know, terrorists. And it was very much directed to people from anywhere in this region. It doesn't matter if it was whoever, you know, they thought did it. But if you're Iranian, you're in that boat. If you're Lebanese, you're in that boat.
100%.
If you're from, you know, Egypt,
totally
you're in that boat.
It didn't matter.
So that was it. Exactly. That was it. So it was like, well, how do we change it? How do we tell another story, the true story? And I was also very, very conscious of like not playing up the stereotypes of there. So I was very conscious. That was like, you know, how I, you know, when I was looking at work, and I wanted people to sort of see the truth. And I think artists are the last truth sayers. I believe that.
So that was part of your mission statement? Is that interesting that you wanted to sort of almost not dispel the myths, but show the beauty and the sophistication
show the reality.
of the reality.
These are people. These are people like you and I. These are artists. We are, you know, we're not what you think we are. You know, whether it's beautiful or ugly or it's just real, you know. And I think that was very important. You know, so Bidoon came about because I had just come back and I was like, okay, well, maybe a magazine, because the magazine can distribute like far and wide. I never even thought I'd ever have a gallery, to be honest. It was never a thing, you know. And so Bidoon was this first, and I called Lisa, who was a dear friend of mine from childhood, and she had gone to Bard, and she is a great writer, and she was studying writing. And I said, well, look, you know, maybe we could start this magazine, and it could be about, you know, art and culture from this part of the world. And it was called Bidoon because Bidoon was, I saw it in
such a great name.
Yeah, I saw it in an article in the Gulf News, and they were talking about the Kuwaiti Bidoons, and in brackets they put stateless. So that's what Bidoon, that's how they use the word
100%.
Bidoon to mean stateless. But Bidoon also in Farsi means to know, Bedun, and Bidoon is or without, you know. So I was like, oh wow, this makes sense to so many of us, because also a lot of us, you know, what do they call it? Third culture kids or whatever.
100%. All of us in some ways.
Exactly.
Well, I call it kind of hybridity, but it's the same thing as third culture, whatever. It's you a little bit of all of that. I mean, you just bonded on a Union Square story, and yet we, you know, live here, and absolutely.
Exactly. So, and then we all had like reasons to leave, whether it was by force or you had to leave as refugees. Like I was speaking to Haif Kahraman, who was just here for a show, and that was her reality. She, you know, left Baghdad as a refugee to Sweden. I mean, and you know, a lot of her work is about that
moment.
Yeah, and the trauma related to that, but also arriving into a place where you're completely not accepted also, and you're different from everyone else. You know, so we all had a bit of this. And so Bidoon was, I guess, the space for all of us in a way. And it was a magazine, it could be distributed, so it's easy for people to get it in all corners of the world. And so, you know, me and Lisa met in Paris because she was living in Paris at the time. And I was like, okay, I'll come there. And then we just worked on the idea, and, you know, we had so many amazing collaborators from the beginning. And then issue 0 comes out. So I now moved back to Dubai. I had started doing shows just independently, like pop-up shows in literally any venue that I could rent or get for free. And my friends here had started this thing called Five Green. I don't know if you ever came to Five Green.
No,
yeah,
I did not.
Yeah, Shihab.
I saw in your bio, but I wasn't sure. I've never been. I don't think.
It's no longer open. It was Shihab and Shahi Hamad, their Egyptian brother and sister, who are friends of mine. Also Dubai kids. Grew up here. And they opened this kind of like I would say it was probably the first kind of lifestyle store, and it had a little gallery. And the idea was to have clothes and things and fashion and accessories from brands that we didn't normally find here, like small labels and and then they had this little gallery area. So they said, we'd like you to sort of be the curator of this gallery. I was like, amazing.
Wow,
so
that's how it started.
Yeah, so this is before the third line. So Bidoun, we're working on. Lisa's in Paris. Now she's gone back to New York. She's managing all of the sort of editorial things. I'm on more, let's say, like, I would say I was going to be more like the publisher. She's going to be like the editor. That was the initial idea.
Yeah.
We launched issue 0 from Five Green, and it was amazing. And, shortly after, I had just met my business partners, who are my business partners now, Claudia Cellini and Omar Ghabash, by ways of a show that I did at Five Green, where we had a Rockney painting that at the time Isabel was representing Rockney. And this is before she had a gallery.
Amazing.
Isn't it a crazy story? Yeah.
Yes. So, it's really the early formation of Dubai's art scene.
Yeah, basically. So this was my last show at Five Green. It was called Home is Where the Heart Is. And I had made the gallery into like someone's apartment. So it had like a bedroom, a wall, and then a sitting room.
Creative.
And everything was, the artworks were for sale. And even like the furniture, I spoke to Ati here, and they gave me really cool. It was a whole thing. And Fatima Ghabash, who's the wife of Omar, had come. I had met Isabel, and she said, I'm working with you. She was going to Iran, actually, a lot.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even going to Iran then.
Amazing.
Isabel from Belgium was going.
Well, but Isabel
and she had met, it's amazing. And so I was like, wow, this lady's amazing. I said, look, I'm doing this show. It's going to be like, a group show, and there'll be many artists in there, and should we put one of these? There was this amazing painting by Rockney. I remember it, and we put it in, and Fatima loved it. She fell in love with it. She bought it. So then I went to deliver the painting because I used to do everything.
Isn't that amazing? What a story!
One-woman show.
And you met Omar.
I met Omar.
Oh my God. You're like, hello, here's the Rockney painting. And he's like, come in, have a coffee.
Well, he
and then
was
you
home.
wind up starting a gallery.
Well, he was home because, Fatima said, oh, come, you can deliver on this day. And then, he was like, what are you doing? Like, he was just very curious.
That's fantastic.
What are you doing? I said, well, I'm really interested in working with artists from this part of the world. And I told him a little brief. He said, well, that's fascinating. He said, so what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I mean, there's this magazine, Bidoun, we just started, and there's a space, Five Green. So I don't know. I probably need to do something proper, like get a proper job eventually, because my parents are kind of like, what are you doing?
My dad has been patient for a very long time.
Yeah. And he's like, okay, now what are you going to do? And so he said, well, look, if you ever change your mind, or if you, because I think I said, I'm going to go do my master's. I think I said that to him. I said, yeah, I think about doing my master's. So if you ever, decide to do something here, let me know. And he basically gives me his card, and literally 2 weeks later, I met
You're like, oh,
Claudia.
I changed my mind.
Well, no, I met Claudia.
Oh, wow.
Which was also an interesting story. So
I did not know any of this about the kind of early creation.
It's a good story, because I think it's important, and I think people just, it gets lost. So I'm glad I'm able to say it here.
Sorry to interrupt you, and I want to hear the Claudia part, but what's interesting is, because we know so many people that are creative, that are young, and want to start a gallery. You hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think there's this myth that it all starts sort of like you go there and you put together a business plan, and circle 4 artists that you want to represent. It doesn't necessarily happen like that. It can happen via delivering a painting.
Literally. Yeah. I mean, because I was not even thinking, because also this was, so we all met in 2004.
So early days, there was no art galleries in Dubai.
There was magic. We have to, so credit where credit is due, because there was, and I remember, so there was a Green Art Gallery.
Okay, Green Art.
Which was at the time, Yasmin's mom was still alive, and got
actually May's aunt, Amna Dabbagh, was her partner there.
Yes, and there was Majlis Arts as well. That was now it's called Al Fahidi, the Bastakia. But Claudia had moved she was visiting Dubai from Singapore. She's American, but has spent now maybe 7 or 8 years in Asia. She'd been to Hong Kong. She had started a restaurant with a gallery in it in Tibet. And this is like, yeah. So she was.
And I thought the lighthouse was experimental.
I know, like, that was really. I mean, like, Claudia's very, very. I mean, very interesting. We were introduced by a mutual friend, but we actually ended up meeting at a wedding. She said, "You're Sunny. I was supposed to meet you." And I said, "Oh, who are you?" She said, "I'm Claudia. I remember like our friend Timur." And I was like, "Oh, yes. Okay." So then we met. And she's asking all these questions. What do you think about Dubai? What's happening? What's the art scene? Like I said, look, I've been doing shows now for 3-4 years. It's great. But, there's slowly people coming around and people come to the shows, but there's not a market, So this is the thing. So I was also reluctant because I was like, how do you
commercially make it sustainable? Essentially,
how do you
sustainable
even start
model.
this? Because it has to,
sustain itself.
I said, so I'm going to go do my master's. That's what I said to her. So, but what if?
That's a great line, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this is clearly the line we're all going to use now.
Yeah.
When I go to your master's, let me tell you, like, no, don't do your master's. I'm going to use this going forward. I mean, my people too old for them. I'm going to go do my PhD. That's going to be my line. Yeah.
That's my next thing. Let's see what happens.
In a previous podcast episode, I had hosted Isabel van der Einde, whom she mentioned just now about her journey that led to the establishment of her own gallery, IVDE, on a Circle Avenue, and how the gallery was adapting to the new digital age coming out of lockdown. You'll find the link to that episode in our show notes. We'll continue this incredible story of all the driving forces that led to the launch of the Third Line with Sunny Rahbar right after the short break. Welcome back. I'm Hashem and you're listening to the Lighthouse Conversations with my guest, Sunny Rahbar. Before the break, Sunny was telling us about the almost serendipitous meeting with Omar Ghobash and Claudia, who almost out of nowhere asked Sunny if she wanted to collaborate on a space in Dubai.
And I'm thinking, this girl I've just met her.
The crazy American.
Yeah, I don't, like she doesn't really know me. I don't really know her, but I like that. I like that she was just so, forthcoming, like open to this idea of starting a business with someone she's never met. So she had more experience in businesses. She had set up a few. She had this art outreach for like schools in Singapore. So she was really like active in that way. And so 2 weeks later, she sent me a business plan, and she's asking me all these things on the financials, like, how much do you think this will cost? How much do you think a rent in this? So she's done everything.
Wow.
And we have a number.
Yeah.
We have a number.
Yeah,
it's how much do we need to do
this is what we need to get going. Amazing story.
And then she's like, so now we need to find, the money. And I said, well, I met this really lovely man, Omar Ghobash, and he said, like, if I was doing anything.
This is amazing. This story is fantastic.
You
know what's the best? Sorry to interrupt you. What the best thing about it is it dispels all the myths about how people do this stuff. They think they have like a long list of fundraisers that they're calling on the phone.
Yeah, no.
And you went to do a delivery. You met the guy, and then met this lady at the wedding.
But it all happened within like the
and you
span
matched it all up.
Yeah, so I said,
oh my God.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Great.
So I said, okay, you know what? Like,
let's go talk to him.
She's like, well, let's make a list. Let's put him at the top. Because I said, I don't know. Maybe he was just saying that. I don't know,
Yeah.
And we called him. I said, hi. I said, Omar, I don't know if you remember. He's like, oh, yes, of course, Sunny. What's up? I said, well, I have a business plan
proposal.
and I have a business partner. And we have this. I said, don't call anyone. Let's meet. So we made a plan to meet at Emirates Towers, because remember back in the day, that's where everybody met. So we meet in the lobby of Emirates Towers, and
absolutely.
I was like, my dad, of course, is like, are you sure you're ready to start a business? You don't know even how to run a business. And I said, yeah, it's okay. Like Claudia knows how to run a business. And
this is great.
And then so we met, and he looked at things and he said, look, I'm very interested. I just want to look over the numbers and I'll get back to you. So don't go to your next person on the list, basically. And that's it. And he called us, and he was on board, and that was it.
Was there a specific reason for the name? Third Line?
Yeah, we couldn't find a name for a long time. And,
Ghobash,
Sunny Rahbar doesn't sound really nice together.
No. Sounds like a law firm.
It sounds like a law. So we were like looking, we kept telling our friends and family, like, look, we want to.
Very cool name.
Yeah, and we didn't want to have gallery necessarily, or art in there, because we were like, we're going to use the space for many different things, So then my dad actually called me one night, and he said, there's this amazing Rumi quatrain. It's a short poem by Rumi, and it's called The Third Line, Khat Sevom in Farsi, which translates into the the third line. And he said, it's a really great quatrain. It's just about the things that are like undiscovered, or about sort of reading between the lines or seeing things that you haven't seen. And, you know, there's three of you. So I thought, I don't know, what do you think? And I thought, that's amazing. So I texted Claudia and Omar. I said, what do you think of this, the third line? And they both loved it. And that's it. And that's how, and so I have to thank my dad. So my dad gets full credit for that.
He does get credit on a number of occasions here. And your mom, who
of course
whisked you back from New York. But that's
exactly.
That's great. So the third line was established. This is now 18 years ago. Yeah, so 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Congratulations, honestly.
Thank you.
It's a great story. When you first started to come up with your first lineup of artists, was that conscious, or was it again you're bumping into them somewhere?
Yeah, no. Well, so from like 2000s, let's say, like I had already started, you know, from 2001, I was definitely
built a bit of a network.
Yeah, and we'd started Bidoon, right? So like, basically that's when I exit Bidoon, when I established the gallery, because it was a lot. So Lisa Farajam continues Bidoon, and then Negar Azimi comes on board, Antonia Carver comes on board in terms of, you know, and so, but really like Lisa runs Bidoon. And so, but we all stay in close contact and everything. We do a lot of things together, including like, you know, the Sharjah Biennale after parties, which were like Bidoon third line productions. And so
you even did D3 in the early days of D3. You did an event here with Hassan Hajjaj.
Yes. And Murad Mazouz, which was like
I remember that.
What was it called, that event? Sadia did that.
Sadia, exactly. The very early days of D3.
Yeah, it was Meet D3.
Meet D3.
That's what it was. Exactly, yes.
We weren't even, I don't think we had a space yet. And I remember, this is so cool. And I came into the party, and there was all the Hassan Hajjaj stuff.
Yeah.
And you had tables and like dancing.
Momo had done the food and the cake, like the basically, and the tent was his idea, which was a Bedouin tent. Hassan had done the artwork. Then we had the programming, which was amazing music. Remember?
Yes, of course I remember. I mean, I remember that night. We stayed very late.
Yeah, it did.
And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So then basically, where are we? 2005. We're looking for a space, and we settled on Alcoves because we were looking for a large space that, we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we started the business with very little. I mean, people think that we had like all of this backing, and it really was. I mean, I don't think we could actually start a business with that amount today. So we needed the rent to be not too high. And so we, Daryush Zandi, who owns the courtyard, is a dear friend of my parents, also Iranian. He's an architect. And, he had this land given to him in Alcoves, and we knew it because we used to go there, and he's built this really beautiful area there, and it's like a courtyard. And and I said, well, maybe we could be there because people already come there, it's known, it's not too deep in Alcoves. And at that time, Alcoves,
space, by the way.
Yeah. So he said, well, you know what, there's these warehouses where I have my storage is right behind the courtyard, and I can introduce you to the landlord. Actually, I think he used to use our warehouse that we took as a storage, and he said now it's available.
It's amazing.
So many. And then,
it's amazing because I also this is pre-Al Serkal.
This is before Al Serkal. Al Serkal didn't exist.
Now it feels like it's super close to Al Serkal, but there was no Al Serkal.
No, there wasn't. I mean,
Al-Qoz was literally Al-Qoz, like a completely industrial complex.
Owned those warehouses, but they were using them for
warehousing,
storage,
and they're like automotive stuff and stuff like.
But this is the thing: there was no gallery licenses, by the way, then either. Correct. So a lot of things we were just starting to be. I mean, like. You couldn't get it. So when we went to register our business, there was no art gallery license. It was framing and novelties trading. Yeah, literally that was story, so it was like a gift shop license. I don't even know what it was. And so it was, but when we saw the space and we saw that what the rent was, we were like, yes, amazing. We'll do this. And my father helped. Well, he designed the first space and the second space. And so he came in and he gave us amazing design for this, And that was, so we finally opened November 9th of 2005.
And what was your first show?
The first show we did was called Beyond Black. And actually it was a group show of Iranian artists, photographers. Sorry, we focus on photography. Included Shirin Abadi and Ramin Harizadeh was in there.
Wow, okay.
Bahman Jalali. Yeah, and there's also...
So did you now start building out your artist roster in a conscious way? Or was that because you were at that time, I mean, Isabel was there. There are very few, as you said, I mean, green art obviously, but it was a very different genre.
Yeah.
were artists coming to you guys because you became this de facto new cool gallery, or were you
so you're
going
saying
after
the
them,
artists-
or a combination?
No, so I had met a few artists. So let's say Yusuf I had met before. I had, through Bidun, we were doing a lot of research on artists. So that was actually great because that was at that moment where I was still.
Bidun was a great network, obviously,
and
the
then
top of the funnel. And
then I was also looking. I was looking a lot. So I was doing a lot of research. Artists didn't start coming to us like at that point. They were like, where, who, why? I mean, so there was a lot of those questions. They were like, Dubai? Are you in a mall? What, why? Like, why? Like,
there was a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
And I can speak for Arab artists, at least, that were from the Lebanons and the Egypts and the Iraqs. I mean, they were very, I don't want to say, there was a lot of skepticism and almost aversion. This place doesn't really have the culture. Why would we go there?
Totally.
I remember those days.
I remember that too. And I faced a lot of that from artists where I was like, look, I know you don't believe it. I know Dubai.
Give it a shot.
But I said, trust us. We're giving this a shot. We also don't know.
Yeah.
But so the first show we opened at this space, the space that was open was Beyond Black. But before we opened, because it took us so long to reconstruct this thing, we were doing shows in Jafar Khaldi's studio that then became Isabel van den Eyn's space, B21.
B21, yeah. Incredible.
It's a really great story. I'm really happy.
It's a great
I'm
story.
recounting it
And,
because I've always wanted it to be there somewhere.
And I'm just going to tell you something. Like I think Maya Allison put on a show in NYU Abu Dhabi a couple of years ago, and it was showing the early days of the New York art scene.
Yeah.
And it was documented. And I had not known a lot about these things. And I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking now loud.
It's so important.
This is so important here because honestly, I've been here since 2005.
Yeah.
I
So you were there when we first came about. Exactly.
I did not know any of
the background. Yeah.
Like none of it. So it's so important to document this.
Yeah.
Somehow.
So this is the first.
Yeah.
So this will be one. This is on record.
Should I pay attention for a change? It's a first.
This is the first time that the story. Well, and also there are many other voices. So this is coming from me.
By the way, we've had Isabel on the show and others, of course. And I'm just saying, is telling that story in this chronological fashion is important because even to people like me who have been here relatively early, who are involved in the art world in some fashion, I did not know any of this.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's important for people. And it's important on two levels. To just educationally, but also for me, really important to understand how entrepreneurial your journey has been and how much of it is trial and error and not giving up and being open to meeting people. And it's not necessarily this very linear journey, which we all love to think it would be, but it's not.
It's not. And we didn't know, like I said, like we didn't even like to call ourselves a gallery because we were like, no, it's a space. And we did so much programming in that space because also we realized it's not enough now we have a space and we just put a show of these artists, that I have, a lot of respect for and that I know and that I think are important, but nobody else necessarily. So we did a lot of educational activity, like programming. We did catalogs. We worked with writers. We still do it now, but we would commission writers to write about our artists so that it would be
I always love
so
that.
important. It's so important because we started doing books very early on. We would do film screenings. This is before Cinema Akil, and there was only like the Hollywood movies showing in the cinemas here.
Yes.
So we did a film program where we invited because we had this big.
I love that. You always thought of yourself honestly as that kind of almost a cultural space.
That's
like
what I mean.
In a way.
You know what? Honestly, like we were. For lack of an institution at the time, I felt like we were like a Kunsthalle.
It's so funny because when we was thinking about the lighthouse, my original thought was Kunsthalle. And actually, originally, I don't even know, even if you know the story, but like, my first name was Bunthaus. It wasn't even Lighthouse.
I think you told me that.
I may have told you this.
Yes.
And Rania Ghandour will know this because I called her and I kept pestering her. I'm like, you need to tell me everything about how Kunsthalle works.
Yeah.
And we spent a couple of hours talking about it. And I met some of her partners in New York at the time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I just don't know how this would work commercially. And it eventually evolved into what we are. That is a completely different concept.
Right. And you had to be commercial. That's the thing. That's what we did too.
And I did speak to you about this. I was like, how do I create a space that's activated, but is sustainable commercially?
Exactly.
And food obviously made sense. But before that, I was sort of like, because if it's not sustainable, how do you keep it going?
How do you keep it going?
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we knew that we had to be a gallery to sell art,
Yeah.
to sustain
Everything
the
else.
programming that we wanted to do, and because we realized that okay, we can't do this nonprofit in Dubai. It's not gonna work. Maybe it can now. Maybe we should start a kunsthalle.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what comes from this conversation. But just like you,
Now we can start a kunsthalle.
yeah, because these spaces are
Another
important.
first, Chirag. We're
Exactly.
starting a
Yeah,
kunsthalle. We're breaking
Watch
news
this
here, guys,
space.
all over the place. Yeah, exactly.
right here in
Yeah,
D3
exactly.
that we were just talking. Maybe it's not a gallery; it's a kunsthalle.
It's a kunsthalle. I was thinking now as you were talking that if I were an artist, one of the main reasons I'd be attracted to what you're doing is also that.
Yeah.
Like we all know, right? Some artists that all of a sudden start busting out and like painting. And I'm like, oh my God, I thought you were a photographer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we want to
Yeah.
bracket them.
Yeah.
So I feel you were giving them the ability to do so many different things.
It was also the conversation, right? So it was really, again, like Bidun, let's say, was like the starting point about this conversation around what's happening. And culture is not, it's just the visual arts. It's also film. It's also,
Yeah.
writing. It's also so many, fashion. We were interested in that as
And
well.
your
Crafts.
artists, many of them are multi-dimension as well.
Again, and I think this probably comes from my background of like wanting to be, I knew that you cannot, I want to, you should,
Bucket.
you should not. It's not that you cannot, you should not. And and we did a lot of, at the time, what would be considered like maybe first time, or,
100%
in the
was a lot
region,
of
I
first
mean,
times.
or in Dubai, definitely the UAE. And it was, showing video for the first time. We did Lale Khoramian's first show was, people were not used to seeing that. Even photography, even showing Yusuf Nabil was
Yes.
at that point,
Yes.
people were like paintings, sculptures.
100%. The early use of Nabil
Yeah.
work was very
Yeah.
pioneering.
Yeah.
No
so
question.
I mean, now it's okay. Yusuf
it's
is
everywhere.
so
I mean, now
known.
he's
He's so
become- yeah,
established.
exactly.
That's the thing. I want to keep bringing it back to the context, which was where we were in the Middle East, and I understood really quickly that even that there were collectors here, right? It wasn't that there wasn't collectors, but they were not buying work from here. Like they were going abroad, or they were going to the old centers, which is Cairo, Beirut, Damascus, was, Tehran. In our thinking, we thought, well, why can't Dubai also be a center?
Yeah.
Because of its accessibility, because it is a place that is safe and people can come to. But what we were faced with was there was not yet, there is now, but at that point, there was no artist actually living and working here and
Yeah,
making
but
work here.
look at your roster of artists now. I mean, it's literally a who's who of the contemporary art world in the Middle East.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's also what we discovered. There was an art scene. I mean, I can't say there
Yes.
wasn't.
Yes,
There was
no,
in
correct.
Sharjah. There was so
Correct.
many amazing artists. I mean, like Hassan Sharif and the whole that group of artists.
Yeah.
But
We spent a lot
there
of
was
time
no
with Isabel
space.
on
There
that.
was no
Yeah.
spaces yet that were like So I think that's kind of what we fashioned ourselves on, like a place where it could be open, like a kunsthalle supposedly. But like
Yeah, and
but
the
'cause you
Flying
can't-
House with Hassan was a little bit of a kunsthalle.
Exactly,
100%.
exactly.
I
So
mean,
that
him
this-
and,
Yeah.
Muhammad Ahmad and,
So that's why I
Muhammad
don't want to say, because I do think I think it's important to say that it wasn't that we were the first to do
No,
something.
I don't think anyone's
Yeah.
thinking you're.
Yeah.
There were parallel things, of
Yeah.
course, happening.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you are one of those voices coming in, and I love the fact that the story is not linear. Again, I keep saying this because I
Exactly.
feel the kind of crowd that listens to our podcast is very interested in. People again. Now the third line is so established, and the artists you represent are so established
Right.
that one could think, and there's nothing wrong with that either, that it feels like, these super established New York and London galleries, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't start like that. It started from
and
something
like all
very
galleries,
different.
I mean, I think if you look at some of the big galleries, like if you look at Zwirner, if you look at White Cube,
Exactly,
they all
the Saatchi's and
started
the-
somewhere, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Let me ask you this. Now that you have the roster that you have, the kind of people, the knowledge that you have as well, and Dubai has grown tremendously, and the culture and art scene has
Yeah,
grown
it's
tremendously.
amazing.
I mean, today when you say
Yeah.
Qoz or a Sirkel, everybody knows.
Yeah.
In fact, people come, we were just saying this earlier, from all over the world just to visit.
Yeah, like
And you
now
have-
in
like
Sharjah,
now,
it's amazing.
Sharjah,
Yeah,
Vienna, which
yeah.
is amazing
Yeah,
work, the work
yeah.
they did there, Hur and others.
Yeah.
So how do you look at the gallery now, where you are, and going from here? Because
Yeah.
you've really already done quite a lot.
Yeah.
What keeps you going, I guess?
It's a good question. I mean, I think about it all the time.
Yeah,
And I think
I'm
at
sure.
that point, it was very like, that was very like mission driven, and
I was going to say, but you tick those boxes.
We continue. I hope that what we can do is continue to work with all the artists that are still. I mean, we continue to have our roster of artists. I mean, I think that I have 25, 26 artists, and I still like to work with artists at a from a big, like sort of early stages in their career.
Yeah.
And I still do that. But also, like, we've added different elements to the gallery. Now we have a little shop in the gallery as well.
That's right.
Where we showcase, furniture designers, or we have books, magazines. We do prints with our artists. And also, we have these ceramics and so.
And I love that you keep pushing. I mean, you keep trying to do different things, which I think is so.
Yeah,
cool.
And we I want to go back a little bit more to like the third line's early days, because basically what happened in the middle is things happen really fast, and we're growing, and then and then things were also growing here. So like we stopped doing the film program because now there's Cinema Ikea, so it's great, and they're doing amazing, and actually the first. Cinema Ikea presentation before she had her space, Bethena, happened in the third line, the old third line.
Is that amazing?
There's so many. It's so beautiful what's happened. I want to engage the community because that now, I mean, just coming from the parking lot here, like there's a lot of people in town. And
we're gonna do our Kunsthalle. We said it first.
Yes, I guess at the beginning we were trying to get people's attention, and I think now we have people's attention, but now we want to sort of maintain that and also grow from this point. What happens next? And I did ask myself that question, and I said, well, what is a third line? Is it still relevant? Does there still need to be a third line? And if it is, what value is the third line adding? And that's what I had to ask myself. I mean, of course, like the artists are. I mean, there is now everyone recognizes and sees these artists and many more. And
do you want a third line in Riyadh and a third line in Doha and in Cairo? You know what I mean?
I want to.
Some galleries have not used this model, right? Some of the American.
I think in terms of expansion, there's two ways. One is to open your gallery in multiple spaces, whether it's internationally or within this region. And another way of expanding is to deepen your program through
which clearly seems to be
which is what I
which is kind of back to basics. Back to basics for you.
Which is what the third line wants to do. So like now I'm doing shows that stay up longer at the space. I'm investing more in making sure that we have, more writing on the works, and so through the catalogs that we're doing, through commissioning writers or multiple writers, and then bringing people back into the space. So we did a talk recently. Our last show was curated by Omar Khalif, and it was an amazing group show that he curated from our.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's brilliant, and he curated basically from our inventory. So over like almost 20 years of work that has been there, and it was incredible. And so he was just here recently for the sort of ending of the show, and we did a talk at the gallery. And I was thinking, this is so important, because we were talking about the stories of how it came about, but also about third line in the past, but also how he saw the program. So I think these are like what you're doing with this podcast. This is important. So for me, we spend a lot of time growing and trying to get attention. Like we did so many fairs, and I will continue to do fairs here and there. I'm not saying I'm never going to do them, but I think we did that part. And I think now people are also coming here, right? So let's be more
You can now really double down on community development in the way you've always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Because you have now the brand and people are coming in.
Exactly.
And all of that.
Yeah. And also I think it's nice. I think it took a long time for us to sort of be recognized, not just the third line. I'm talking about the art scene here, in general, for people to sort of take it seriously, for people to understand that, and to like change that narrative, that sort of, 2001, 9/11.
Yes.
That story has changed a lot.
I have to also give you credit on something I want to mention. I think it's very important because I get a lot of younger friends, or sometimes not younger, frankly, but friends that are saying, I would love to be buying art here, there either for my house or for my own collection, whatever.
Yeah.
And, and they find the scene intimidating and or a lot of the artwork not affordable. And I really feel you have done, both you as Sunny, but also Third Line, honestly, a lot to dispel this. I mean, things are making prints, for example, people can buy something for 1,000 dirham that is
Or less.
Very valuable,
yeah.
or less, exactly. Number one. Number two, I think as a person, honestly, being so open and friendly and approachable. I mean that because, I remember going into places, especially in New York and in London, places like that. You walk into these galleries and you're like, you almost feel they don't want you there.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't. I'm like, why are you open then? And I never, ever had that feeling walking to Third Line, even if they didn't know if you weren't there.
Thank you.
And I really feel that's important because if you can grow that ecosystem, and we spoke about it in other panels, from the grassroots, I think it becomes a very lonely little scene between, just the ultra wealthy and a few
it's a little
artists.
clique.
Yeah, it's a little.
And that's not what, I don't think that's what any artist wants.
No, they definitely don't.
And just to reflect on the last few
boring as
days,
hell.
I've been at Sharjah the last few days for the Sharjah Biennale, which is the 15th Sharjah Biennale, which is like 30 years of the Sharjah. It's incredible.
Amazing.
And, it's so amazing, like being there. And there's a lot of artists in town. I think there's 150 artists in the biennial. And you're there. And like yesterday, I was in Khorfakan, and you're seeing all these artist projects. And, it's open to everyone. Everyone can go there and see. And that's what art is. And so artists want their work to be seen by everyone. It's not just reserved for a few people that can afford to buy it. And as a gallery, yes, we are a commercial venture. We do sell the works.
Of course, as you should.
These shows, now there's a Hive Kahraman show. I did the...
No, please do.
Please, come and see it because...
It's up until when? Mid-March?
March 24th is the closing date.
So it's through Art Dubai.
So through Art Dubai.
Okay. Well, go see the show, guys.
Yes, please come see the show. But what I mean to say is the Third Line is also open to the public. It's not just for people who can come and buy a
Will you
work.
be at Art Dubai as well?
Yes, we'll be at Art Dubai.
So you'll have a booth at Art Dubai, and of course there's a show you have at your own gallery.
But what I mean is, to answer your question, I think that we shouldn't be intimidating. And that's something that was very... Now, when you come to the gallery, we have the shop in the entrance.
Yeah, so it kind of like lowers.
So you come in and we also have a pop-up by my amazing friends Hikmah that
I love him. We just did a pop-up for them here. We did a workship with them.
Really, they're amazing with Shireen and Mahdiya. And people might find it strange because this is by the way, this is the Third Line kind of 3.0 because we've changed our space again. We're still in Al Circle. It was by choice. I mean, it was with intention, that we said, okay, we want the space to be more welcoming.
I love
even
that.
more than their old space. But come in, you see the shop, you can, people say hello. We're not rude. We're not,
No, it's very different.
I think, unfortunately, that's what happens. Like a lot of times, like you said, people have this experience of galleries where if you don't have enough money to afford the work, then you shouldn't be here. And that's not true. I'm sorry. That's not
I
true.
don't think it's true either, but I think that's a perception, and it's not necessarily started in Dubai. It's a global perception. I mean, we have essentially what you can call a restaurant space.
Yeah.
And as I tell you, we commission artists all the time.
It's so important.
And part of it is to again remove this myth that you have to see Hashem Harb in a gallery space only or a museum only. You don't have to.
Absolutely.
And these artists want that.
Yeah, all artists. I mean, I think, the reason I work with artists, because like I said, is I believe that they're the last truth sayers. I think it's so important for the work to be seen and to be understood by many, not just by a few, because they're telling us a story that otherwise we wouldn't know if we didn't have the access to or to see it. And it's important, these stories. It's not just for, a few people to know these things, because they're really internalizing and putting into the world, I think, a truth that needs to be seen.
I couldn't find a better note to end. Sunny, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I feel we've learned so much today.
Thank you.
So really, thank you for making the time at a busy week.
Thank you so much for having me. You have now the official
story.
One side of it from Sunny and about the beginnings of Dubai. So let's continue, and the Kunsthalle.
I know.
Coming soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Catching up with Sunny is always a delight, but I was especially glad to be able to capture and in a way document the history of the Third Line, because in many ways it tells a story of the art scene in Dubai that's not been told. I shared a bit about how important it is for us to document and showcase those unique moments in time during our January review episode, which we've linked to in our show notes. Thank you for joining us on this episode. I'm your host, Hashem and Sunny. We're produced by Chirag Desai, and our content director is Farah Al-Sharif. You can connect with us on Instagram at @thelighthouse_podcasts and listen to our previous episodes by visiting thelighthouse.ae/podcast. Happy art season, or as we call it, March Madness. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.